How's everyone doing today? First and foremost, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for allowing me to be part of this congregation today. And I love the beginning of this sermon. So, yeah, as Katerina eloquently stated, thank you so much for the wonderful introduction. Uh, I'm a first generation Nigerian American, former professional soccer player, grew up in the church as well. So, I wanted to add that. So, it's always meaningful to be part of what y'all are doing. And like Katerina said, I want to talk about the topic that I want to talk about is exposure to expansion. So when you're exposed to great things, you're able to expand your horizons, expand your mindset, and hopefully and ideally expand the opportunities that come your way. So, as I mentioned before, I was first generation Nigerian American. Both my parents immigrated from Nigeria, late 70s, mid 80s, and I'm the first of four siblings. Grew up going to Catholic school, and my parents sacrificed a lot for me to and my siblings to expose us to, not only better schooling, sports, structure, all the things that help me and some of the things that I do now. From the experiences, the insights, the skills, and the structure, I've been able to, do a lot of things to give back and to provide for myself and my family. And that doesn't happen unless you're exposed to a number of things that I may not have been exposed to. Currently, as Katarina pointed out, I do a couple of things, helping athletes understand how to leverage the money that they make and make smarter career decisions. And then more importantly, and the part that actually excites me the most is some of the stuff we do with my foundation. The OKUgo Foundation, essentially it's a play on my last name. Just we want to help people, provide them access and opportunity, and ultimately expose them to different programs, experiences, so that they can reach their highest level and whatever it may be, whether it's sports, whether it's education, whether it's finding different pathways for them. If we can help unlock those talents, that's what's very important. So early on, before we connected, I was asked, what sermon comes to mind or what Bible verses come to mind when, I talk about exposure to expansion. And we went over it today with the parables of talents, chapter 25, Matthew. And while it's not on par, like exactly, there's bits and pieces where I take from the story of the rich landowner and the three servants and the third servant, bearing the money out of fear. When we invest in maybe the people that are underserved, or the people that may not know, if we can give them the tools and the insights and the time to understand that there's pathways, there's experiences, there's things that you may not know, so that when you do come up with the opportunity, you could take advantage of it and compound interest, or grow or develop or evolve. And while it's not the same per se versus the two servants that took the talents and built five talents, and the third servant took the five talents and buried it and just kept it. If us as people invest in the people that are underserved or youth, maybe we don't have a third servant that's doing that. So when I talk about exposure to expansion, that's what I talk about, because I am a living example. My parents did a lot for me to expose me to different environments, whether it's through sports and the opportunities that soccer provided, or making sure, they allocated time to sacrifice me going to Catholic school growing up, to expose me to, teachers and structure and volunteers and mentors that allowed me to, when I did have the opportunity on my own, to understand that I can compound the information that I've been learning, or I can expose and expand my knowledge to hopefully lead pathways down the road. Um, as it pertains to, some of the stuff that we talk about with our youth, I just want to emphasize that consistent presence. Some of the stories that I or some of the involvement I have with the youth today, You'd be amazed at how bright some of these kids are, and I'm sure a lot of y'all know that because of the stuff that y'all do in the community. Um, it's not for a lack of talent. It's not for a lack of skills. It's not for a lack of um, personality or character. It's just if you're boxed in, if you don't know, you don't know what you don't know. So with my foundation and people that I respect that are doing a lot of good work, it's okay, how can we help expand their view? If you're up close to something, you can only see, but if you take a step back or you take an over aerial view, you can see the whole landscape. And that's essentially um, why the parables of talent story rings true to me, and why I'm such an advocate of trying to expose people to things that they may not be comfortable with, things that they may not know, so that they can expand their knowledge and expand their horizon. And it's not just from a business perspective or personal development perspective. It's an inclusion perspective. It's a faith perspective. If you grew up and you didn't know about Lord and Jesus Christ our Savior, but then maybe you have people that expose you to it, you're more willing to accept Christ. So that's pretty much it on my end. I would love if anyone has any questions about what I'm currently doing, what I'm up to. Um, More than happy to share. Once again, it's a true pleasure to take this time on this Sunday. And I really appreciate y'all giving me the time and respect to share a little bit about myself and a little bit more on why I'm such an advocate of this concept of exposure to expansion.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. I have some questions to kick it off, and I'll let other people chime in as well. First of all, just want to say that I grew up playing soccer my whole life, and it was game changing in my life. And so, yeah, totally a game changer. And so, as a fellow soccer player and from a family of soccer players, uh, I related to that. Uh, and it's interesting that the text you chose today, which is from Matthew, is kind of, it's an interesting text because it sounds counterintuitive at some level, because it's like the people who get more will get even more, and people who have less will get even less, which it
Huh.
sounds like, people who have less should get more, people who have more should get less, more logically. But I like the way you tied it into your message, which is that it's what we do with it. It's really like we're all given a life, a different life, and I guess that the story of the text is if you do nothing with it, that's the worst thing. In other words, to be conservative in the worst sense of the word, like if you just are bury your head or try to protect yourself, don't expose yourself to anybody else different than yourself. Um,
Mhm.
it's the worst thing we can do in life. And
Yes.
your point seems to me is that the more you expose yourself to others, you take those risks. That's where you get the return. Um, what I was curious about in your own life, you just kind of you went through it fairly quickly about coming to the United States, raised in the Catholic Church. I was just curious, what was there a moment or a special time in your life when you were exposed to something that now you look back in retrospect, that was the game changer of my life, like having that exposure? What, was there something that you had exposure to?
Yeah, that's a great question, and thank you so much for eloquently kind of summarizing my thoughts better than I did, to be honest, in the sense of like leveraging the opportunity that you have. Yeah, so I appreciate that. From the standpoint of like that game-changing moment for me, it was when I was 14 years old. So I just finished my freshman year at Jesuit High School, an all-boys Catholic school in Sacramento, California. I was playing soccer and basketball at the time at a fairly high level. Um, and then I got invited to the residency program. So the residency program is the U17 national team program um, for the top soccer players. You move to Florida, and it's basically boarding school.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's basically boarding school for the U17 men's national team to ultimately compete for the World Cup. So at that age, at 14, 15 years old, I had to leave my family and move to Florida. And that exposed me to so many different things, not only just from a level of play and increasing my development and just understanding what it takes to play at an elite level day after day, month after month, year after year. But then from a travel perspective and exposing myself to different cultures and ethnicities and environments. And as you know, soccer is the global game. So I was already exposed to it a little bit, but so my first month in Florida, we had a trip to Argentina for a month. That never would have happened unless I was exposed to the opportunity that I was granted. Um, Handling adversity, so growing up on the soccer teams and basketball teams I had been on, I was always the starter, I was always the captain, I was always the number one player on the team. And now it's like, oh, I'm competing with the best of the best. So there's times where I wasn't playing or I wasn't starting. And just that exposure to um, you can reach a higher level. You just got to put in the work to get there. Those were game changing moments for me. Um, but at the end of the day, and you said it earlier, if you're not utilizing the opportunity that you have, you're wasting it. And a lot of the stuff I do from a business perspective is highlighting athletes and understanding that you have a unique opportunity with the money that you make, with the people that you're in front of, to utilize that and leverage that for long after you're done playing. Because we all know as an athlete, you're going to be done playing at some point. So similar to the parables of talent story that we mentioned, if you don't use it, you lose it. And that's kind of what I was trying to stress. Which so thank you so much for providing further clarity in my initial talk.
Yeah, I really am relating to what you're talking about. I was 16 when I was on a U.S. soccer team that went to Germany, and I'll never forget it. It was game changing.
Yeah,
I think so. One of the things is just travel and meeting different people, different cultures that you're citing, and
yeah,
for you it was Argentina. I should also
most
add,
definitely.
um, I a funny story about me. I used to go to church with my soccer uniform on, so shin pads under the seat kind of deal, and then drive to the games. And my dad would drive me, and sometimes we'd have to miss church. And this really thrilled me when we missed church because I was, 12 years old. I was like, oh, great. This is horrible. I have to go to soccer. And my dad, who is my spiritual advisor, who's in the sanctuary every week at 96, he was driving. He's just like, okay, you think you're missing church, you're not missing church. We're going to talk theology. And that's where I got my theological education, interestingly, is my dad answering my questions on the way to soccer games. And he opened up, like, I would just ask, I was precocious with religious questions, and he could answer them or tell me where to go. So that was so it's interesting with sports. I would also say that sports, which is I don't think it's as understood how much it teaches your skills of dealing with failure. You will lose,
Yep.
you will win. You'll be great one day. You'll be a loser the next day. You'll make the mistake that loses the game. You'll score the goal that wins the game. All those things to learn at a young age, I think, are really, really valuable. One other follow-up question before I open up to everybody. I know I'm hogging the questions today, but the other question I had for you is, so based on this life, and you have this success in soccer, which is amazing, and you have all this exposure, why do you decide, you're a soccer star, so you've made money in professional soccer and so forth, and status. There are more watches you can get, more apartments you can get, more cars you can get. Why create a foundation? Why back to kids again who are less fortunate, and why exposing them to opportunities?
No, thank you for that. So for me personally, growing up, how I grew up, I saw the good, the bad, the highs and lows, the less fortunate, the super fortunate, the ultra successful, the middle class. And a lot of things that I learned is that there's not that much of a difference. It's just opportunity and environment. So that was like one seed that was planted initially early on, just growing up. And then once I became a professional athlete and a lot of the stuff that we did in the community, they would just be one-offs. So we show up, do an appearance, and then never see some of the kids that we were helping again. So I always was like, if I were to do something, I want to be able to create like long lasting impact. So not just one time, never see you again, no follow up, no progress reports. And so that's really what sparked the motivation of doing this. And now it's like, all right, in terms of just growing up in the church and understanding being like growing up as a Jesuit, it's like our mantra was meant for others. So how can I be a man for others and provide impact, provide inspiration, um, because all these things like that we have, cars, watches, jewelry, those are all material. But if we could change and impact the lives of others, it's the network effect, the impact effect of that is generational. So that's what it's all about, and it keeps me motivated. It keeps me young, trying to keep up with some of these young folks, and nah, it's fun.
That's awesome. I love that. Yeah. So essentially, you were exposed to the idea of living for others, and now you have a chance to actually apply it. And it is so
Most
true.
definitely.
When I was listening to you, I was thinking to myself, um, how many world-class geniuses are right now in a complete state of devastating poverty that have no connection, and we'll never know. We might never know them. We'll never. They could be the problem solvers of the world. So
Yeah,
addressing poverty, giving people exposure actually benefits all of us because they could be the problem solvers of the future. Like you
exactly.
said, the genius. If you ever worked with kids like that, you do see the genius factor. It happens everywhere. So I just admire what you're doing.